Welcome back, Canteeners, to episode 97 of Culper's Canteen Cup. We have had some spirited discussions, let me tell you. Roger and I were in the great state of New Mexico together, just blowing up Josh's phone the entire time. It was great. We wish Josh could have made it because the discussions definitely would have been more spirited all face to face. But we love pulling Josh's cord every once in a while, and which we'll get into during this episode. But what really set it off was Biden's speech the other night. Oh, boy. We will delve into that a little bit. And that spurred a very interesting discussion between the three of us as to, if we were president, who would we select as our cabinet? And we've got a special episode for everybody because we're going to go through our selections. We haven't shared all of them with each other, but we were very, very blown away by Joe Biden's speech the other night. It was something out of the Hitler playbook. I'll tell you what, man. The minister of propaganda was in full effect that night, and maybe Roger might do something interesting with our backdrops here. Maybe not. We would like to emulate that as much as we can. Let's just jump right into it. And I know Josh is just raring to go. At least he's been saying he's raring to go, and he's saying some pretty outlandish for me. But it might make sense for a lot of y'all, and let's just jump right into it. Josh, what did you think about the speech the other
night? So I didn't watch it I didn't watch it live when it happened. I had to go back and watch it after you. I think you texted, you made a comment about it, and I was like, all right, let me say that. And I dove into the Twitter sphere, and holy cow. It was absolutely, it was absolutely bananas. And one of the first pictures I saw was that, that blood red backdrop, of him with the two Marines. And the only thing you could see on the two Marines was basically like their silhouette and then their white gloves. Right. And I was like, and dude, when I saw that, I was like, holy cow. It was very reminiscent. It was very reminiscent of Hitler making one of his speeches in front of the I believe it's called, what was it called, the Reichstag in Berlin. And I was like, dude, I was taken aback. And then I listened, went back and I watched it in its entirety, and we all thought Barry was divisive, right? I mean, and he was. Barry was probably one of the most divisive presidents ever in history. I think until last night, basically Joe Biden said 70 plus million Americans are domestic terrorists. I mean, he said that. It wasn't like, well, yeah, maybe you could infer that. Maybe, well, I could see how somebody might think, he said that, or, maybe he meant something. No, he flat out labeled Trump supporters domestic terrorists. So if you voted for Trump, either in 2016 or 2020, you are a domestic terrorist according to the current president. And which is, is crazy because the president, what was it? It was last week when he came out and was like, they're fascists. They're all fascists, and we're going to combat fascism. And it's like, I think Roger brought that point up today. It's like
semi-fascists.
Semi-fascist, right? Like, because you're kind of fascist, not really fascist. You're like the Diet Coke fascist.
You're a semi-Nazi.
You're the store brand, right? You're not name brand. You're just
you only got
you're
one
like
of the
store brand.
You only got one half of the crosses. You haven't earned the other one yet. We just do it. Did you just have the zig? You don't have the zag.
Yeah, it was crazy. And this dude comes out and starts talking about fascism, and then the person who's in charge of the government, who is in charge of the military apparatus, whose party controls the media, whose party controls basic the school systems, comes out and was like, you guys are fascists.
And social media. Yeah, and social
media. The ones that are dictating to social media what they should pull and what they should do and what they should censor. The same administration who sent law enforcement, basically to bury the Hunter Biden story, to sent them to Facebook and social media, calling us fascists. It was like, okay, well, I want to get Roger's thoughts, but they seem to be. I don't understand it. They seem to be pushing for for this to escalate into to violent conflict, and I'm telling you, dude. They think they want that. They think they want that. I see a bunch of people on Twitter. Jennifer Rubin was one of them. She was like, mass arrest should start now. And you're like, okay, well, that sounds very, I don't know, fascist of you. To go out and arrest your political opponents and throw them in jail. I mean, I don't know. We gonna do another night of broken glass? Is that what we're gonna do? Okay. But they keep pushing for this and they keep pushing for this and they keep turning the temperature up and they keep turning the temperature up. And we said it a couple episodes ago, they're going to get something like another Ruby Ridge. They're going to get something like another. They think they want that, but I don't think once they, once they get a hold of that, it's going to get a hold of them, and they're going to realize very quickly they do not want that. This is going nowhere good. But you know what? I'm game, man. They want to play, let's play. And get Rogers' thoughts on it.
So much like I think both of you guys, I didn't watch it live. We got back to the hotel rooms as those that can see on YouTube. This is how dedicated I am as I'm recording from a hotel room in Vegas. But we get back and I'm about half liquored up. I was drinking some Heaven's Door. It's the Bob Dylan bourbon. So I think it's bourbon. Yeah, bourbon. So cash strength. If you got a chance to find it, pick it up and have some. Anyway, I was probably about 4 or 5 glasses into it. Wife's all tanked as well, and like Josh, I just saw like on Twitter, one, it was all the Democrats clearly stayed up late that night. And that's all I saw was that. And I think I saw maybe one conservative news channel that had the picture of Biden that, we'll probably use on our cover art. And, it's got the red background and you hit it on the head with the Marines. You had the silhouette of the Marines with the white gloves. And that was it, right? Just kind of like standing off to the back. And I'm like, oh my Lord. So we start watching this thing. It made me angry. My wife was pissed. I mean, she was going like she went to bed angry last night, and that's how divisive it was. But when you look at the whole speech in itself, so Biden's speech, make no mistake about it, it wasn't to unify anybody. It wasn't to bring independent votes over to the Democrat side during the midterms. It was to fire up his own base. Biden has looked weak. Okay. I don't care how you say it or how you look at it. I don't care what metric you used. He has looked very weak across the spectrum. And that's why you get the angry old man. We're the United States of America. It's like he's piercing, trying to pierce through the television into your skull or something like that. And it reminds me of, and both of you guys have been overseas. It reminds me of young soldiers that go overseas that, in a country that do not speak English, they just feel if they speak louder and louder and more direct that, oh, you know what? I didn't understand English at first, but you yelled it at me to my face. So now I totally understand English. And that's what Biden is trying to get across. He's trying to fire up his own base because what he's worried about, I think what the polls are showing him is that in a lot of these races, and we'll get into it as it gets closer and closer several weeks down the road, but a lot of these races either have the Republican ahead or the Republican slightly behind. And I think this might be anecdotal or whatever, but everything I've seen in the last several years, I guess more than several years, you go back 4 years, go back 2016, and you look at the polls, and I think I've actually read a couple articles in The Hill on this. Basically, if the Democrats are up 2, 3, 4 points, you're either going to lose or you're even. That's kind of how most of the polls have worked out. Unless obviously you're in Manhattan, California, places like that, the polls are probably pretty accurate, Washington State, whatever. But across the board with most of these purple states or even red states, they show the Democratic candidate 4, 5, 6, 7 points ahead. And some of these places that might be even, and that might even be you losing by a couple, because there are some suppression polls out there. There are a lot of suppression polls out there. Like you hit on the head of the media being complicit with this, but make no mistake about it. The whole goal of his speech was to look strong and to fire up his base, which he did. He fired up his base. But here's the deal. I don't think you convinced any independents to go over to the right or go over to the left. Excuse me. You darn sure didn't convince any Republicans to say, hey, you know what? You're right. I'm going to vote for you again or vote for your party again. And so I think that's what the measure, it'll come out, the telltale sign will be the midterms to see that, hey, was he able to turn out the base? And the problem that we've seen, even when he went up to Pennsylvania recently, Fetterman was like, I had a scheduling conflict, right? So he couldn't make it out with him during his speech. And I'm going to tell you this, you're the president of the United States. I don't care which party. You're the president of the United States. There is no scheduling conflict. Okay, if I'm supposed to link up at some local town, especially running on statewide, right? We're not talking about running in your district where it might be important that you need to be at that Denny's or that IHOP because that's how small and influential those meetings can be. We're talking about a statewide campaign, and the president of the United States comes to your state. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, there is no scheduling conflict. You make it, right? So the fact that these folks are turning him down, and Fetterman's not the only one, the fact that folks are turning him down, I think the Democrats know we're going to struggle. They're going to struggle in the midterms. And to even have a chance, I think on the House side, it's pretty clear. It's just a matter of how many seats they're going to lose. On the Senate side, it's still a toss-up. But to even have a chance at holding the Senate, they're going to have to turn out their base. So I've got a couple more things that I want to say about it, but I'll throw it back over to Luke to get some of his initial thoughts.
Yeah, on the speech, you guys covered most of it. You know, I don't know who's in charge of setting this stuff up. I think the left is leaning real hard into this dark Brandon meme, or the left. I think someone within the Biden administration is leaning real hard into this dark Brandon meme.
It's not even cool.
No, it's not.
It's not even
dumb.
cool.
Because the left can't meme. They can't meme. And for those of you, I think we covered it a couple episodes ago, but the dark Brandon meme is something to the effect of Joe Biden is actually playing dumb, but in reality, he is like, he's the puppet master. He's the great and powerful Oz behind the scenes, and he's dark. It's dark Brandon. It's 5D chess, like Josh said. No, it's not. It's dumb. The left can't meme. They don't get it. So they're leaning hard, like Roger said. They're leaning hard into this stuff. And did they rile up the base who follows Twitter and follows memes and stuff like that? Sure, they did. But some, older Democrat. My wife works with some older Democrats, like old school. Like these people are in their 80s and 90s. They watch a speech like that and they're like, we still remember Hitler. We still remember that. They don't know what the hell that is. So I don't know who's making the choices, but I said, I was watching, I said to my wife, I was like, this looks like a Star Wars movie. It's even more over the top than Mussolini. It's crazy. And I was listening to Ben Shapiro today, and I'm not the only one that thought that, because he was like, yeah, dude, this guy looked like General Hux and whatever Star Wars movie that is, riling up his troops and stuff. It was comical. But at the same time, I'm like, Roger, I was viscerally upset, because it's like, who made this call? How stupid are you? And how stupid do you think the rest of us are not to see through this? And it's really difficult. It's getting more and more difficult. I'm on the fence between Roger and Josh on this, as I usually am, on whether you attribute it to stupidity or malice. It's like, are you really trying to do this? Or are you just so stupid that you're trying to rile up your base and you thought this was the best way? It's upsetting, because I don't like the word fascist. I don't like that word, because for the same reasons I don't like the word racist. Because what is it really? You can change the definition any day of the week. We've seen the definition of racism change at least 3 times in the past 10 years. We've seen the word fascism change, the definition of the word fascism change, twice, 3 times as many as that in the past 10 years. And I could give you the dictionary definition of what fascism was 5 years ago, the lucrative merger of corporations and government. Now it can just mean whatever the hell you want it to mean. It's the other side. They're the fascists. This is the problem I had with him labeling MAGA extremists, like Josh was saying. MAGA extremists, all Trump supporters. Okay, let's take it a step further than that. Let's say you don't really necessarily support Trump anymore. You're like, you know what? I'd really rather him not be president next time. He was good in his time, but you know what? I'm not, a Trump guy anymore. But I am pro-choice. I am I'm anti, gay marriage, whatever you want to say. If you're pro-choice, you are now a MAGA extremist. In other words, if you don't agree with Joe Biden, you are a MAGA extremist. Like, what does MAGA, make America great again? That has already been equated to Trump. You can't even use the words "Make America Great Again." Pro-life. Sorry, you're right. Every time, go edit that, Roger. Every time I said pro-choice, substitute with pro-life. You understand what I'm saying, though. If you're pro-life, you're a MAGA extremist. You know, it's dangerous. In my opinion, I think I will chalk that up to stupidity and being so out of touch. Josh will disagree. He disagrees with me on that. I'm going to chalk it up to that. But they are playing with fire with this kind of stuff. They're playing with fire. I look at that speech and Josh is different. Josh, I want you to sound off on this. But I look at that speech and I'm like, you guys are playing with some sticky dynamite here that is ready to blow. It's sweating. And I think that's dangerous. But one of the big things is, and this is what everyone's pointing out, obviously, is you are not in a political speech. You're not supposed to use the military, the Marine Corps band, the Army band, or, whatever. You're not supposed to use military props for your political speeches. Biden and the Biden administration came out and said, no, this is just a presidential speech. And Josh, get off your phone because I'm about to kick it straight to you, brother. He said it's not a political speech, but if you don't even listen to the speech, you just read it, that is a campaign stump speech. He mentioned Trump twice, who is the, assumptive or whatever you want to say, nominee, I guess. He's probably the favorite right now that no one else has thrown their hat into the ring. That was a political campaign speech. And he had the Marines standing right behind him. That's a big no-no. You're not supposed to do that. And I think I read one, Twitter post. I can't remember who wrote it, but I was like, that's awesome. They're like, if any Republican, not Trump, well, especially Trump, but any Republican made that exact same speech, with words changed around the other way, with the exact same backdrop, CNN would be sweeping graphite off the roof of their headquarters in Atlanta. So, Josh, I'm kicking it straight to you, and you're sitting there texting somebody. It must be pretty important. So, tell me why you think this is malice and not just sheer stupidity, and then just go off for a second. But go off. Just go off, Josh.
So here's why that it's malice and not stupidity. It's stupidity on Joe Biden's part. But because Joe Biden didn't write that speech. Joe Biden didn't sit down at a computer and type that speech out. Joe Biden didn't choose the backdrop. Joe Biden didn't choose the colors. Joe Biden reads what he is told to read. It's stupidity on his part. It is malice on the part of those who are actually running this administration. We've talked about this before. It's the Susan Rices. It's the Ron Klains. It's the KJPs. It's the diversity hires that are working behind the scenes. It's the berries. All right. Joe Biden is not running this administration. Anybody who thinks that Joe Biden is making the day-to-day decisions, you are absolutely 100% high. Yes, absolutely. Go back. I want everybody who hears this, I want you to get onto Twitter. If you don't have a Twitter account, create one. First thing you need to do is go follow C3 on Twitter. The second thing you need to do is go read Joe Biden's tweets. After you read Joe Biden's tweets, compare Joe Biden's tweets to what he says when he's not on the teleprompter, when he's not reading word for word what somebody has told him to read word for word. It's gibberish. That's all it is. Now go read his tweets. His tweets they are just as, if not more divisive than the speech that he gave last night. And a lot of them, they're garbage as far as the message goes, but they're coherent, they're well structured, they're put together. The person who writes those tweets, it's not that geriatric who they card out every, once in a while. That's why this is no longer we can no longer chalk this up to just, oh well, that's just Joe being Joe. That's just Joe, not making good decisions. There's absolutely no way Joe Biden put that speech together by himself, chose the backdrop, chose the colors, was like, all right, this is how it's going to go. This is how the theatrics are going to work. He is not doing that. He is doing what he's told because he's stupid, but the people behind him are hateful and full of malice. That is why. That is why I do not agree that you can chalk all this up to stupidity anymore. You just can't.
Fair enough, man. That's a good argument.
So, His whole thing, and this is why conservatives continue to get their ass kicked and lose in the culture war. You're losing the culture war because you want to take this moral high road. You want to take this high ground. The most conservative thing I've seen in the last couple months was when Bill Barr came out, and Bill Barr was like, well, I didn't want to use, the Department of Justice, to basically use that as a cudgel against my political enemies, this, that, and the other. Oh, really? Well, that's fantastic, Bill. I'm glad you're good at playing. I'm glad you can play the bagpipes, because guess what? The guy who came after you did. He came out and he has fully weaponized the Department of Justice against the conservatives. Guess what the guy did before you, Bill? And I'm not talking about Jeff Sessions. That guy is not even buying green bananas anymore. Right? I'm talking about the idiot for Barry. Roger, what was God, I can't remember his name now. The Attorney General.
About Eric Holder.
Eric Holder, that's right. Eric Holder, you know what he did? He weaponized the shit out of the DOJ against conservatives. And here comes Bill Barr. And Bill Barr had the opportunity to go after Hunter Biden. Bill Barr had the opportunity to go after Hillary Clinton. And you know what he did? He said, no, we're going to take the moral high road. We're going to take the high ground. Well, you know where the moral high road leads you? It leads you straight into the work camp, you moron. It leads you straight into the labor camp that the left's taking you to. Because that's where you're going to wind up. I'm telling you right now, and I know you guys disagree. I know you guys disagree with me. And I'm probably half crazy, and I don't give a shit. But this moral high road, this moral high ground shit is going to get everybody on the right killed. It's going to get people put into internment camps. The Democrats literally put people into internment camps during World War II. And people were like, wow, that'll never happen in the United States. No, man, that'll never happen. It's already happened. George Takei's on Twitter every day talking about how conservatives and MAGA, they're all fascist and they're all gonna, they all want slaves back. It's like, dude, your own party, the party you support, is the only party who has ever put Americans in internment camps. Yet you support them. I don't understand it. I don't understand why conservatives continue to capitulate when it comes to the culture war. How many conservative elected officials came out today against Joe Biden's speech? How many? I can tell you right now, not that many. The only one that I saw, and I'm sure there's some others, was Rick Scott, Nikki Haley, and I'm not a fan of Rick Scott or Nikki Haley anymore, but they actually came out and was like, hold up, absolutely inappropriate. Right now, that's just all some little bullshit talk. They got to get their little tweets out there so they can say, well, I rebut up against it. Not one conservative came out and actually threw down some, and put some harsh words in there and actually, put some stuff behind it. Because basically, Joe Biden came out last night and said, if you are pro-life, if you support traditional marriage, if you support strong borders, if you support enforcing the law, if you support standing up for the Constitution, then you're an extremist. You're an extremist because that's what the MAGA movement is, right? Strong borders, put our country first ahead of everybody else. You're an extremist. What you got? Luke?
I'm going to read a tweet. This is from an elected official. It was tweeted about, I think, 12 hours ago. And I'll read it, and you can tell me who you think it is, Josh, okay? Hard to imagine a speech with less self-awareness than the one Biden gave. The exact opposite of what our country needed, in tone, in appearance, and in substance. This man simply isn't fit to lead. Guesses?
That's so Mitt Romney-ish. McConnell.
You're so close. It's Dan Crenshaw.
Dan Crenshaw. Oh my, you knew it, dude. Dan Crenshaw. Whatever. See, that's That's the shit I'm talking about right there. That is the shit I'm talking about. Nobody, I'm telling you, conservatives continue, and that is why conservatives continue to get their ass kicked in the culture war. The president of the United States, he didn't come out and label you like, well, we disagree, and they're taking away a woman's right to choose, and grr. He came out and was like, you are an extremist. You are an extremist. You are semi-fascist. At what point does that language turn into action? How long was it, from when Hitler called Jews basically, they were germs, and they were animals, and they were this. Like, how long did it take before the night of broken glass after that?
Dude, I think we're already seeing it. A dude showed up at Kavanaugh's house ready to assassinate him. I mean, I think that we're already there. It's just on a smaller scale. I think we're talking scale, right?
Yeah. No, we're talking scale, but and you're right. We probably we probably are already there. With the raid at Mar-a-Lago, and the guy showing up to Kavanaugh's house again. So I'll say this: I don't want this to happen. Like, I truly, truly don't. But I don't see any alternative ending to this. We're quickly going away from the pick your own adventure book to, oh no, we are on a charted path, and that path only ends one way. I think we're very, very close to that. And while I don't want that, if that's the way it has to be, then let's just go ahead and do it and get it over with, because I like my chances. Right? I like my chances. I've seen a lot of pictures of those on the left. I like my chances. Even the Antifa guys who showed up out there in Texas. And oh, by the way, as a side note, what the hell is going on in Texas lately? Right? The Antifa guys who showed up out in Texas, they showed up and they got little David Hogg arms and necks. I like my chances. I like my chances against those guys. That's all I'm gonna say. So anyway, I'm going to get off that rant for right now, but I'm telling you right now, somebody needs to step in. And if it takes doing the George W. Bush, hey, I've got to violate the free market principles to save the free market. If it takes, hey, I got to violate constitutional principles for a little bit to save the Constitution, then maybe that's what it's going to take. Because the level of rot that we have now, is it something that you're just going to be able to, throw some bleach and some Windex on your baseboards and clean off? The level of the rot, it's in the studs. It's in your trusses. It's deep. It's going to have to, you're going to have to take that thing down to the slab and start over. And that's where we're at. Why? Because conservatives sat on the sidelines and wanted to take they wanted to thump their chest and take the moral high road. Yeah, absolutely. You guys are Ned Stark. You guys are Ned Stark. No, we're going to I have to serve with honor. I have to serve with honor. It's like, hey, man, where did that get Ned Stark? It got Ned Stark's head on the chopping block. That's where it got. Spoiler alert for you people living in a cave and, you haven't watched Game of Thrones since 2000. What? This thing came out in 2011? Get with the program, people. Get your shit together. Shit's going bad. What you got, Luke?
Oh no, it's over to Roger on that one. He's ready to explode. Maybe. I don't know. I never can read Roger. Go ahead.
No, not really. A couple of things just to close out a little bit on the speech specifically. So it did serve its purpose, because one thing that he did not talk about, and there's a bunch of tweets out there, but obviously he didn't talk about the economy. He didn't talk about inflation. He didn't talk about Afghanistan, the 1 year anniversary. Like the reporter asked him on the 1 year anniversary of the withdrawal, did you speak to the family of the service members? He's like, today? Well, no, but I have spoken to them before. Well, yeah, today, you moron. Today's the anniversary. This is the day that you would actually do it. He didn't bring up the southern border. He didn't bring up fentanyl. He didn't bring up crime. He didn't bring up fuel prices. He didn't bring up food shortage. So everybody is just talking about the speech, which is what they want, right? That's what they want, especially going into the midterm. So part of that has already worked itself out. The funny thing is he's making all of this about Trump, and the guy is not even in office and even declared that he's going to run again. Now, we know why he's doing this, right? Because everybody, they assume that Trump is going to be the presumptive nominee and he's going to run again, what have you. but he might not be. I mean, right now it's 50-50, and I'm still betting that he doesn't. But it's amazing that they are spending all this time and resources on a guy who is not even determined that he is going to run yet. So that kind of lays the land out for you. As far as, the whole fascism piece, when your party has complete control, how do you have a war on fascism? You are the fascists. And I hate to use that term because I know Luke hates the term, and I think it gets overly used as well, especially to that extreme. But it's your party has been in control over the last 18 months. It's hard to be a fascist, okay? True definition, right? Fascist. It's hard to be that dictator when you're not in power. They're the ones that are in power. That's what makes me angry about this thing. When you look at everything that's going on in this country right now and all the things that, and again, I get it. Not everybody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. And you're never going to have everything firing on all cylinders. But nothing is going well. Everything this guy touches is the exact opposite of Midas. It turns to poop. Now, as far as Josh's piece, and this is funny because some of this, when we go back and forth on text, it's hard to tell, right? You never get tone across. You can't get emotion. So you only assume what the other individual is feeling, thinking. And a couple of times Luke's even typed up, I had to stop myself from laughing before I typed this thing out or whatever. Josh hit it on the head with the moral high ground. My whole point to this is, and you gave a great example with the Hunter Biden piece, you can take the moral high ground and still be as aggressive as heck, right? With Hunter Biden, you use the full weight of the Department of Justice and the FBI. But you're right in the fact that conservatives don't take it to that point, and they don't take it to that point because with conservatives, the majority of them, they're not at war. They don't see themselves at war.
And that is my problem with conservatives. Conservatives think that they're on some, they're fighting a war like the British in the Revolution. It's like, oh, we'll fight them in a sunny meadow on Sunday afternoon, and this
Right.
The Queensberry rules and shit like that. You're in a back alley knife fight in the Bronx, dude. You need to get your shit together and understand where you're at.
Absolutely. And that's the point. It's the guerrilla warfare versus, like you just said, guys out there, hey, we're going to beat the drums and we're going to fly the colors and we're going to go out to this field. And then you start getting shot from the wood line. You're like, what the heck? And we're not advocating or pushing for violence at all. We're talking about there are legal ways, especially with the way the government works, that you can accomplish this stuff. But you have to understand that you are at war. And there are a lot of aggressive methods that you can take. When you look at, and here's the scary thing too, when you going back a little bit to the speech again, the scary part about it was, and Luke laid this out very well at the very beginning, it's the whole, if you take it farther than just the picture of him and the red background and the Marine Corps, you got to remember the FBI just raided the former president. What other signal is he sending by having the U.S. military stand in the background? And I know that they've all brought up, you've seen on the left, here's pictures of Trump with the military. No, we're talking about during a political speech like this, right? So, it's and the F-15 comment, exactly. I had notes on that. It's hey, the first time we were nice and sent the FBI after you. What that tells me is the next time we're sending the military after you, because he just called, and he already tried to walk this back today. But during his speech, he basically called 75 million Americans extremists. And Karine Jean-Pierre. So here's her tweet. So following up on all this, and this goes back to Josh's point about reading she probably actually wrote this one versus Joe, who doesn't write his own tweets. Quote, when you are not with what the majority of Americans are, then that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking. So does that apply to sexuality as well? What does that apply to? Is it just politics? No, they talk about unity when you agree with me. That's what it is. And that's what makes you so angry about it. And here's the thing. It's not even a conservative issue here. The Libertarian Party tweeted today, and I don't know if Josh controls the Libertarian Party's Twitter account, because their tweet was, it's time for a national divorce. the national divorce isn't going to happen because the right's not fighting that war. It's not even a divorce. It's just battered spouse syndrome at that point. And we talked about this months ago, and McConnell, he is the epitome of a politician. When they asked him about what the Senate's going to do when they take control and this and that, and he was like, we got to win first. And we talked about this months ago. They talked about this massive red wave. And I still do believe that we're going to take the House. And I think there's a good shot that the conservatives take the Senate as well. But it's not as slam dunk as everybody thought it was 4 or 5 months ago. Who was the one guy, Josh, that you said that's coming back on, that's coming back to Biden's cabinet? What's his?
John Podesta. Everybody remembers John Podesta and his wife.
Look
He's
that
going to
guy
be a
up.
senior. Yeah, he's going to be a senior advisor to the president. And just by the way, if anybody can get a hold of his email address, his password to that account is probably password.
Yeah, I mean, his stuff's all over WikiLeaks. And when you look back at, because that dude is tied to Barry, he's tied to Hillary, he's tied to, that guy goes back. And not enough attention was paid to the WikiLeaks and his emails. It's dirty. I mean, in my opinion, we are beyond politics at a lot of points. And that goes back to the point Josh is trying to make. They're not fighting fair. And I'm not for the, Josh, like, maybe we just suspend some freedoms for a little bit. When I don't believe in all those things, right? But there are a lot of aggressive measures that you can take. We had carte blanche with Hunter Biden. But the GOP's just never been ready. It goes back to the Affordable Care Act. You had years to come up with an alternative to this thing. You knew it was going to happen. And what happened? You get controlled. It's like, oh, we don't really have anything ready to go. Because they're not in a war. They think it's 20 years ago. They think it's 30 years ago. And this all started with Barry. And one thing I will say, and people, it goes back to why I like Carrie Lake, but even with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think she was one of the only ones that came out yesterday and just destroyed. I forget the exact tweet. You have to look it up. But came back and just destroyed Biden and was like, hey, you want war? You got war. And then the left you hear is like, oh, the Republicans, the right, they're calling for violence. I'm like, really? Like, you just sat there. Like, what about the 570 some odd riots that happened a couple of years ago? They just sat by the side. Like Luke said, you just had somebody try to take out a Supreme Court justice that, had he not on his own called himself in, would have probably happened. I think we could probably agree that probably would have. He'd at least got a round off. And maybe killed him, worst case.
It would have been a mostly peaceful assassination.
It's shocking to me. One, I still can't even believe that we didn't have personal protection for a Supreme Court justice. There's only 9 of them. I mean, come on. We've already spent $1 trillion and sent it over to the Ukraine. I'm sure we can pay for protective services for the 9 Supreme Court justices. Back to my original point, all the rhetoric out from KJP, the White House, everybody on the left, they're ready for war, and they're already fighting. And so the right has to fight back. And when we talk about when they take back the House, and you've got some that they see on the right as being extremes, are like, we already had 3 articles of impeachment drawn up for Joe. Absolutely. And you know what? Who needs to be on the Hill? Hunter Biden. All of these folks, you got to bring them up. But here's what's going to happen. Nothing. It won't happen because Mitch McConnell should have had a speech ready. McCarthy should have had a speech ready. And
DeSantis.
McCarthy's just talking, all of them, any of them, all of them. The only ones that have come out firing away are I'll say it, slightly crazy ones. that the more and more, the farther this goes, they're the only ones fighting. Okay, metaphorically, clearly, right? They're the only ones fighting. And so people don't pay them attention. People don't pay Carrie Lake attention. They don't pay attention to Marjorie Taylor Greene and the other brown hair lady. They don't pay them any mind. And it's like, but you know what? They're the only ones that are fighting.
But but a lot of that is the conservatives' fault.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Because look what happened. Look what happened to Sarah Palin in Alaska. Right? The establishment Republicans, the establishment, and I'm using air quotes here, conservatives, they undermined her. Murkowski straight undermined her. McConnell straight undermined her. McConnell's doing it to Blake Masters.
Hey, man, that may come back to haunt Murkowski, though. Hopefully, if the people in Alaska are paying attention, that may come back because it's still ranked choice. And
Yes.
Chewbacca may benefit from that. I'm getting off the rails here, but yeah, I'm getting off the rails, and I'm derailing
you're good
you guys'
because
point.
go ahead and finish your point because I do want to follow up on the ranked choice thing.
Well, yeah, I think we all agree on the ranked choice. I do think in this, again, if you've got an electorate that's paying attention, uh, they will see what the three of us saw with Murkowski and how that affected Palin. You guys clued me in on that, and I had to ask the question, do my own research. But it's very obvious. Palin didn't win because she didn't get the support of Murkowski. And that may come back and bite Murkowski when it comes to ranked choice because, like I said, I think I said this a second ago, Chewbacca or whatever her name is still running against Murkowski later on down the line. So go ahead, Roger, with ranked choice. I'm with you, though. I think I know what you're going to say, but go ahead and say it.
Well, I had to look into it a little bit more because Josh threw out a comment when we were texting the other day. He's like, Murkowski screwed her. And I wasn't really following. I just kind of assumed that Sarah Palin was going to win. And he said, Murkowski screwed her. I was like, oh, would she say something? He's like, no, she just didn't back her. And so when you looked at ranked choice, we explained it a little bit, but basically you have the three candidates. And if none of us get 50% of the vote, then what they do is they start eliminating the person who has the least amount of votes. And so when you go vote, let's say us three are candidates, you get to say, Luke is my number one choice, Josh is my number two choice, and Roger is my number three choice. Okay. None of us get 50% of the vote. So Roger is eliminated from the contest. And people that wrote me in number one, okay, those votes are gone. But people who wrote Luke in for number two, he gets all those votes. Or if you wrote Josh in for number two, he gets all those votes. So that's what happened to this because the election was actually on 16 August. It just took this long to whittle it down. I forget the name of the third candidate, Begich, something like that. 21% of his vote did not have a second or third choice. That, among other reasons, that is why Palin lost. And that is probably strictly on Murkowski supporters because 20% is not a great number. 20% would have put her over 50 and she'd have won easily, right? Easily would have won.
Dude, 60% of Alaskans voted Republican in that. 60%. And because of the ranked choice and because Murkowski didn't get out there and stump for Palin's probably not going to win. She didn't win. Like
but
that,
it'll come back to bite them. But you know what? That's on them. That's
insane,
like it is, but I have no issues. It goes back to like with the abortion thing. I have no issues with the people of the state because they passed it. It barely passed, but it went to ballot. It went to vote. The people of the state of Alaska said, this is what we want.
Dude, half the people in Alaska are drunk Eskimos. They didn't know what they were voting for. They just want their village to be, they just want to be allowed to, have alcohol sales in their village so they stop having to, smuggle it in and make homemade hooch. I say Alaska, one of those weird states too. Alaska's like Maine, right? There's a lot of folks up there who are very independent. There's a lot of folks up there who, don't want government in their lives. It's one of the reasons they move up there. But Alaska has a really strange underbelly in the people who are so dependent on the government programs because they're drunk Eskimos or because they're meth heads, and they need that government cheese and that government support, to support their habits. So they're all about, milking Uncle Sam. So they love they love that Democrat welfare state. But Murkowski she's tried to distance herself from Trump. Palin was obviously Trump supported, Trump backed. And, it goes back to my entire argument about, the conservatives and their bullshit is as soon as you hear 3 senators sided with the Democrats, we automatically know which senators it is. It's Collins, Murkowski, and Romney. You don't even have to check the game tape. It is literally like Well, one conservative Supreme Court justice sided with the liberals. You don't even have to
Hey,
check. You don't have to check the game
how
tape.
many
You know it's John Roberts.
how many text messages do we have back and forth between us three? One of us will say, "Hey, yeah, three conservatives sided with the Dems," and we all boom, boom, boom. Yep, spot on every single time, and that's a problem.
Yeah, dozens. But people keep McConnell's going to throw his support behind Murkowski 100%. McConnell didn't throw his support behind Palin. And it's going to come down. The GOP, I swear, I want the GOP to be the pallbearers at my funeral so they can let me down one last time. We had the perfect chance to take back both chambers this year. I mean, it's perfect. You could not pick a worse president. You couldn't. I don't even know that Kamala Harris would be this bad. But watch. They are going to F it up to where the Democrats are going to keep the Senate. And we are at a point now, dude, we may not take the House. We may not take the House because of this nonsense. Stop electing these damn people. Stop electing the Dr. Oz's. Stop electing the Dan Crenshaws. Stop electing the Mitt Romneys. You're not doing yourselves any favors. You think they're conservatives, and you're like, well, I'd rather have Dan Crenshaw than, Ilhan Omar. It's basically like that Office meme with Pam, and there's like, find the difference in the picture. And, she's like, it's the same picture. Dan Crenshaw is the same person as Rashida Tlaib. It's the same person. Oh, Roger's like, oh, that's so crazy. I'm not. It's the same person.
Well, no. So
Dan
basically, what you're
Crenshaw,
saying is that you're just never going to vote from here on out because any candidate you pick, including your beloved DeSantis, who still has red flag laws down in Florida, who has done nothing to repeal any of those, guess what? None of them are perfect. And I understand and appreciate the principle. And yeah, I would love to live that way. Here's the real world. One of the two are going to get elected. And 9 times out of 10, I will take that GOP candidate over the Democrat. 9 times out of 10.
it's the same person, unless it is a DeSantis or a Trump. It's the same person. Until I will not vote for any of these Dan Crenshaw, Mitt Romney, Dr. Oz.
You might as well just stay home because that's the way they're all going to be. You might as well just stay home. So you're basically saying you're just never going to vote again.
Was Donald Trump that way?
It took you like 8 months to get on the Trump train. You already kicked his ass to the curb.
No, dude, I got on the Trump train as soon as Trump. I did not think Trump had a chance.
You tried to put him on the train. That's what it is. Not riding the Trump train. You tried to put Trump on the train.
I did not think Donald Trump had a chance. I really didn't. You were on the Trump train from day one, and I get it. I wanted him to be the nominee, but I didn't think he had a chance. I was like, yeah, man, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to get disappointed.
So it's about electability then.
It's not about electability.
Wait a minute, but you like Trump, but you didn't think he had a chance. That's kind of, the same argument that we use, right? You have to go with who you think can also win and is the closest in line with your principles. Period. Because one of the two are going to win. That's the fact. One of them are going to win.
It's not like you go with the person that's closest to your principles, right? But at the same time,
or you don't go at all, right?
At this point, yes. Or you don't go at all.
Okay, so if it's Romney versus Kamala, you're not going.
If the nominee for the GOP is not Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis, and this is barring some outsider dark horse that we aren't aware of yet, comes in, I will sit my ass home come election day.
Okay.
I will not vote.
So we're getting somewhere here. So you're saying barring any dark whatever. Okay, so Hitler's son or grandson now. We find out it's Hitler's grandson, and he is God's gift to the left now. And it's Hitler's grandson versus Mitt Romney. You're going to vote for Mitt Romney, right?
No, I'm sitting. Oh my God!
What the hell? That's good. That's good, man. Hey, he's a man of principle, people.
I will die. I'm telling you right now. I think you underestimate my willingness to die on this hill. You underestimate my willingness to die on this hill. I am done voting for establishment Republicans. Done.
Okay. Okay. So
Because they've gotten where have they gotten us?
No,
Where have they
get you.
gotten us?
I'm with you on that. That's why I do believe, though, we kind of cut Roger short. So, Roger, do you have anything else to say on that? Okay, he's good. We kind of I do believe we are at a turning point. I do believe that. I don't know where it goes from here. I think Josh and I, and even Roger, have different views on where it goes from this turning point. But we've preached this for, I think we were a few months into the podcast, and we've preached that, hey man, we got to create our own culture here. As conservatives, we've got to fight the good fight and create our own culture. Read books, write them, talk about them, create music like our boy like our boy Carlton Zeus. And Roger's got something to say.
No, it's just funny because this morning we texted again and Josh brings it up, or one of us brings it up. And it's always like, so are we really going to go down this road again as far as voting for his principles? And he's like, one more time. I'm like, who believes this? It's at least once every third day that we bring this up? At least.
Yeah, man, it's like Rocky. Josh is like Rocky. One more round. Just one more round. That's all I need.
We're on Rocky 53 right now.
Hey, I didn't hear no bell.
I didn't hear no bell. That's right. Man, it starts not just with the politicians. Of course, they are our elected representatives, but it's us who are putting them in there. And at the end of the day, as Josh says, most Americans are peas. And I'm starting to think, most conservatives are peas too, because we're not out there putting it out on the line. It's very difficult for me. And I've said this, Josh went off on a rant the other day on text. I said, bro, you got to get off Twitter. Like take like 3 hours off Twitter, bro. Because I know how it is. I get on Twitter and I'm just like, there is no talking to these people. There just is. And it's easy just to give up. It's like give up. I'm not trying to encourage anybody to get out there and get in the Twitter flame war. That does no good. But the way these people on the left make me feel, at least, is just, it saps my energy, man. And it's just like, it's not even
worth
the people
on the right too, because neither one of us, I think, are that far from Josh. Because I tell you what, it's at least every day I'm like, F all these people, F them all. Conservatives, liberals, F them all, libertarians. You know who's really letting the people down? Libertarians. A libertarian candidate, a third party. The best you can come up with is Gary Aleppo Johnson. If you wanted a time, even going back to 2016, right, when a third party, true libertarian candidate who was like somewhat sane could probably win. We've had 3 elections. Well, we're going to have 3 elections.
I think the libertarians may surprise some people this year. I don't think they're going to win. I don't think they're going to win anything. But I think the guy's name is Dave Rubin, who's part of the Mises caucus. And he is now like the spokesperson for the Libertarian Party. That guy, if you listen to him talk, he is no Joe Jorgensen, and he is no what is Aleppo Johnson. The guy has some good points. So if they could get somebody, and I'll even say if they could get to a point where we're making a good point, hey man, I'll consider the Libertarian Party. But until they put in a reasonable candidate, I'm just not on board, dude. Joe Jorgensen, are you freaking serious? Johnson? So hold off, Josh. Hold off for just a second. So as we said, the culture war and all that stuff, it begins with us, man. I mean, we're doing this podcast. Folks, share the podcast. Who cares what your wife thinks? Who cares what your friends think? They're not going to cancel you. Just share the damn podcast. That's all I'm going to say, man.
They may actually get canceled.
No, they won't. But they may. It's on you. Buck up, folks. So, Josh, let's get into it, man. Let's just where the rubber meets the road, man. We've been talking way too long about this stuff. Let's get into some good stuff, right? So, Josh, talking about Biden's speech, and for those of you who don't understand, like Roger said, we text, and a lot of stuff is lost in text, and we get really worked up. But then we get here on the podcast, we actually work shit out. Because when Josh says, you got to fight dirty, I immediately go down the road of Josh wants to repeal the Fifth Amendment, just like that tyrant Abraham Lincoln, and that's not what Josh is saying. He's just saying we need to fight. We need to fight. I think
the hell it ain't.
Okay. Well, we're going to go down this road. So but again, we do work some things out. I think that Josh and I see things more eye to eye than we don't, as far as how we need to be fighting back and the methods we should do that. But it created a very interesting conversation. Okay, Josh, you're so smart. If you were president, who would you appoint to this cabinet position? And that turned into a really interesting conversation between the three of us. And we decided, yeah, Josh has got his list. Are they typed out? Mine are
Get
just
the hell out of here. He's actually got
no.
show notes. He's actually got show
Wow.
notes.
Typed and printed, baby. Typed and printed. What's up?
Mine are just written out on this politically correct Big Chief tablet.
God, that is so racist.
I know, right? I love it though. So, Josh, you're president, right? And let's say it's fairly soon. Let's say it's within the next 8 years or so. You know, you're president. Why don't you just give us an idea, quick rundown of the first steps you would take within your first year, and maybe some of your appointees. And we're going to kind of kick it around the horn here on who some of our appointees are and how we would deal with things the first year. And if you haven't tuned out already, which 75% do before hour one, there might be some familiar names on this list. So some loyal listeners.
Yeah, so mine's a little different, probably than what your guys is going to be. Because see, my title is not president. I'm, some people may call it the emperor. Some people call it other things, other titles. You can call it what you will. A rose by any other name, right? So here's again, I go back to my earlier comment. In what was it? In 2007, 2008. George Bush was like, to save the free market, I had to violate some free market principles. Well, we're at the point where I really truly believe to save the Constitution and our republic, to save the republic, we're going to have to violate some of those principles. I'm okay with it, right? You may not be okay with it, and that's fine. That's fine. But I'm okay with it. I can sleep at night. I really think Thanos was onto something. For those of you that kind of follow that, that movie, I think Thanos was onto something. It gets to the point where you're just like, man, we might have to sacrifice a few to save the many. So what will I do? And we're not going to say in the first year, first term. I'm going to work quickly. I'm going to pretend I'm on a deployment, and I'm going to just start pounding cases of Rippets and Jock coffee, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, these agencies and everybody who works in them, everybody, I don't care if you're the janitor. I don't care if you're the secretary. You are fired. You no longer have a job. You are no longer employed. You can learn to code. You can go figure something else out. I've actually got a program.
Build
I actually
solar
have
panels.
a program. Yeah, you can build solar panels. I actually have a program for you set up with the Department of Labor to help you with that transition that you're going to have. But these agencies are immediately and effectively on day one abolished. The U.S. Secret Service, gone. The U.S. Secret Service will be reconstituted in a different form. You don't work for the Department of Treasury, yet you investigate financial crimes. That doesn't make sense. You're gone. Done. Right? We'll reconstitute you in a little different way. Department of Education, gone. The ATF, FBI, CIA, DEA, NIH, DOJ, FDA, FCC, all gone. Done. We'll reconstitute some of those in some different forms, but other than that, gone. All right. But once again, no former employees may once again be employed by these agencies. And some of those employees, depending upon their level, you are not allowed to be employed in public service for the rest of your life. Period. There are zero exceptions to that. All right. So these agencies will be immediately bolstered and reformed. Department of Agriculture, Department of Transportation. Pete, you no longer have a job. You can go spend your time chest feeding your child with your husband, whatever his name is. Nobody really gives a shit anymore about you. ICE and CBP. So those two are now under the Border Protection Agency. The Border Protection Agency includes CBP, ICE, and Import Export Control. That's it. That's done. Those will actually receive additional funding and personnel. Other actions on day one: federal law enforcement, you will only assist with multi-state and political crimes. That's it. Once we realign you, the FBI, by the way, your intel authorities are gone forever. You will never receive those again. The FBI is completely 100% gutted. You will only focus on multi-state and political crimes. That's it. For those new hires, I'm sorry, but the ones that are employed by the FBI now, you cannot transition to the new organization. You can learn to code, or you can go report directly to the Secretary of Labor, which will be Ryan S., our listener in Virginia.
Nice.
Along with his assistant, his deputy director, who I'm going to appoint Mike Rowe. They will have
good call.
They will have a secretary of skilled labor, which will encompass basically carpentry, mechanics, which is going to be ran by Mo M. Remember Minute with Mo and Mo from episode 10? He's going to run that. And the Secretary of Transportation, who's also going to have a lot of jobs ready for you guys. And that's going to be ran by Josie down in Florida. You're the new Secretary of Transportation in my administration. For those agencies that actually stick around, that I do not dissolve immediately, they will have a church commission level oversight that is 24/7. The first time any of those agencies violate someone's constitutional rights, that entire agency is dissolved. Those involved will spend the rest of their lives in a penitentiary making big rocks into little rocks. So that's kind of what day one looks like for me. I don't know, Roger. What does day one look like for you? I've got some more cabinet picks. We'll kick this around a few times. What's day one look like for you? Luke's talking about what are you going to do in your first year? Nah, bro, it's rippets. This is day one. Day one. We got shit to do.
So I do like your comment about the FBI and a lot of their authorities, and I think the overarching theme, and this is why we go back to Abraham Lincoln being a tyrant. The overarching theme needs to be to reduce the executive branch, the power of the executive branch, and the federal government as a whole.
I got one thing. Why is Abraham Lincoln a tyrant? You keep calling him a tyrant. I don't think he was a tyrant.
Read up on Abraham Lincoln. That's a whole new episode by itself. He did more to expand the power of. I know he is. He did more to try to expand, or he did expand. The dude suspended like habeas corpus. He did more to expand the power of the executive branch that has carried on ever since 1865 than the other president until what George Bush, maybe. So anyway, that's a whole nother episode. I do agree with you with the FBI piece. I think a lot of their stuff needs to be restructured. I kind of went a little different way. So the overarching theme needs to be to reduce the federal government. And I think you hit something on the head talking about the federal government should step in when there is a disagreement or dispute or crime among the states, politically or internationally. Okay, that needs to be the overarching theme with this stuff. I kind of went down each cabinet and just listed some folks. And again, some of these folks are a lot of our listeners. So different approach. But so first of all, my vice president's got to be my wife. I'm saying that because she's sitting here right with me right now, and she'll be the one running stuff anyway and does a way better job than I do.
Well done.
So I get points for that. Chief of staff position's gone. That position will now be filled by the vice president, as it should be, because the vice president is worthless and does absolutely nothing. And there is no real weight behind the chief of staff or the vice president. But I think making the vice president the chief of staff, one, they will actually know what the hell is going on in the administration. Unlike a lot of our folks, it's not as political because it is tied to productivity and performance. And it's somebody who will be qualified to take over at a moment's notice, probably even more qualified and more ready than the president, because they'll have their hands in. It's like the COO of a company, right? They have their hands in the mud and in the dirt. So I think you remove the chief of staff is filled by the vice president. My press secretary, Joe Rogan. Or I've got three. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. Or I could do Tucker Carlson, or I could do Greg Gutfeld. Um, I have some notables, so I'll kick it to Luke for some of his initial thoughts. So I want to throw my notables out here first, because a lot of the folks that I look at my cabinets, I look at things a little differently, and a lot of folks probably have gone through this. They experienced this in their hiring process, where they look at your resume and you have to show a desired experience. You have to show 10 years of this or that. You've done it before, performance, what have you. I kind of take the Army recruiting approach to it, and the Army in general, where I look at trainability, because I believe, all three of us and a lot of our listeners, that no matter what job you're doing, you may not be an expert in that job or know very little about it, but you know what? You're going to do the due diligence. You want to succeed. It goes back to an old Jeff Bezos quote, right? He wants people who are right. You can be as smart as you want to be, but he wants people that make decisions that are right. And that's kind of my approach to a lot of this stuff. So when I get down into the cabinets, there'll be a lot of the folks that I know, that we know, listeners of the show, that do well at whatever it is they do. They may not necessarily be subject matter experts in that field, but it's somebody who, yeah, they will probably do very well there. Before I get to that, and we'll kick it to Luke, I did have some notables. So my notables, and I think you could interchange these folks with a lot of these cabinets, minus the ones that I choose to dismantle. Totally agree with Josh. Secretary of Education, gone. I think when you look at the administrator of the EPA, you combine that with the Secretary of the Interior. I think you get rid of the EPA, you roll that into the Secretary of Interior, and that post holds both duties. The notables I have: Rand Paul. I think he can fill a variety of these positions. Donald Trump. He might actually be a great VP, chief of staff. Not that he would be, because he's got to be in charge, but that personality, that would be like your chief of staff person if you still had that position, or your vice president. I think Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott, Ben Carson, Tom Cotton, Marsha Blackburn, Rick Scott, John Kennedy, maybe, Josh Hawley, Elon Musk, Larry Kudlow, George Murdoch, aka Tyrus, and Andrew Yang. So those would be my notables that I think could fill some of these important cabinet positions. So Luke, I'll throw it back to you for your initial thoughts, as Josh looks at me and shakes his head in disdain.
The Andrew Yang thing, I actually do understand, along with the rest of them. I could see how he could fill certain positions. I really do. When looked at through a lens of what you described as far as like trainability, can you do the job, so on and so forth. But keep in mind, any one of these people can be fired with a drop of the hat, at least with me. I'm sure that's how it would be in Josh's administration. It's like, yeah, man, I'm going to take it. Like, Trump was not good at that, in my opinion. You're fired. Just you're fired. I don't need time for your explanation on why you did this. No, if you have to explain it to me, if it doesn't make sense to me in one sentence why you did what you did, you are fired, because obviously you do not understand the commander's intent. So I'm getting a little worked up here. I like what you said, Roger, about chief of staff, but I'm going to save I'm still going to have a chief of staff. I'll put it to you that way. But I do like what you said. Y'all's points make a lot of sense. I'm just going to kind of go down the list here. I want to say them all right now in my decision behind them. But what I'll preface with is I am not going to dismantle everything immediately. Okay. Josh wants to play dirty. I want to play dirty too. I want to use all of these departments as much as I can to further not only my domestic policy, but my foreign policy vis-a-vis the EPA. In other words, I'm going to bring China to their freaking knees with the EPA right before I dismantle it. That's how it's going to go. And I feel that way about a lot of these departments. So I will appoint these people as secretaries, and their instructions will be, we are going to milk this for all it's worth, and then you're going to dismantle it. That's just how it's going to go. Okay, so VP, right? VP, I thought about that a lot. I thought about VP and chief of staff a lot. And I got three choices for VP. I don't think any of these guys would take it, though. That's the problem. My first is, and I'm going to use last names on some of these. Bros, if you got a Facebook profile, I'm going to use your last name. That's just all there is to it. I know you listen to the show. You like stuff on the Facebook page, so whatever. So my first pick, first pick will be Scott, my boy Scott Casey. because he would keep me balanced. We would have, maybe smoke up a little sherm because I'm going to make sure that stuff's legal in the first week. I'm going to drink some Rippets and get marijuana legalized. That's what I'm going to do. Joe Rogan I had for vice president because I think that dude would keep me balanced and I could smoke sherm with him. My third choice, who would not smoke sherm, would be Ben Shapiro, who is also one of my choices for AG if the attorney general, if my number one choice didn't take it, which, man, it would be tough. Think about this. Somebody comes to you in your mid-50s and you're not a political person. You've never been in this. Would you want to take that job? You'd have to do a lot of talking some people into it, especially with Joe Rogan, who's richer than King Croesus.
But that's why they'd be good at it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why they'd be great at it.
Right. So I'll go with the departments I do believe in. Secretary of State, Rick Grenell or Linda Blanchard, period. Secretary of State, bam. Rick Grenell was so fun to watch when he was ambassador to Germany. And Linda Blanchard, who was the ambassador to Slovenia while I was there, she was in the same vein as Rick Grenell. It's great. And we're going to have some overlap on some of these. Secretary of Treasury, he's going to have very specific instructions. That's my boy Darren in Amarillo. Boom. What's he, fourth in line for succession or fifth, something like that? And SecDef, I don't know if this guy listens or not. I had a hard time selecting this one because a lot of our listeners are gonna listen to this. They were like, "Hey, where was my name?" Man, there's all kinds of secretaryships, Secretary of Army, Navy, all this stuff, man. Hey, just chill out, okay? But I got Justin Overbaugh as my SecDef. You talk about promise. You talk about a thoughtful dude. I got Justin. Now, Attorney General, I already said, and I'll stop here and kick it to Josh because we got so many more, man. For Attorney General, I said Ben Shapiro, but my first choice would be the Randall County Sheriff, Chris Forbes. Number one. That dude he would be a great Attorney General. But is he a lawyer? I don't care. I don't care. I don't know if in the U.S. Code somebody has to be a lawyer to be Attorney General. I don't care. Now, Sheriff Forbes, I'm right along the lines of Josh almost, with some of the agencies or the bureaus underneath the Department of Justice. But, keep your powder dry podcast. Cody and Colby, y'all can fight over who's going to take what. But again, you're going to have very specific instructions on what to do. If Cody, if he wants to take the FBI, very specific instructions, which I'll be listening to Josh very closely. But I'll leave it at that for now. I've got a lot more here, but Josh, what are the picks you got?
Yeah, so those are you have some good ones. So I really wouldn't. So I'm not going to refer to my cabinet as a cabinet. I'm probably going to refer more to it as a small council. So my vice president is Ron DeSantis. That's gonna be my vice. I actually had the same sex state as you, as in Rich Grenell. So my Secretary of the Treasury, also referred to as my administration, if you want to call it that, we're going to call him the Master of Coin, is Roger. That is Roger after Roger dismantles the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve no longer exists in my administration.
Do I need to go through one of your re-education programs before I take this position, or how does that work out?
No. That just happens if you don't do what I say. Right? Again, and I got to remind folks, we have to, in my administration, we have to violate some of the republic, principles to save the republic.
While he's investigating agencies for violating rights.
While I'm investigating the agencies for violating your constitutional rights, absolutely. You know what? The best person to be in my administration is just a regular citizen. That's the best person to be. If you work in the government, in my administration, you should wake up every day with fear. You absolutely should. You should wake up every single day with fear. If you're just a normal, average day, American citizen, you wake up and it's going to be great. You're going to have a great life as long as you're not a communist. I don't regard communists as real people, so I really don't care what happens to you. We'll deal with
What
you
about
accordingly.
what about semi-communists?
Oh, semi-communist, yeah, done. Once that seed's planted. So my Secretary of Defense, actually, you came up with Justin Overbot, and Justin Overbot is great. He kind of comes into this a little bit because I had him as Secretary of the Army. But my Secretary of Defense is Jesse Kelly. Jesse Kelly of Twitter fame, because Jesse understands what needs to be done. And he is going to make you some omelets, but he is going to break a lot of eggs. Which
Is he
I'm
a
okay
listener?
with. Jesse Kelly, no, I'm going to go ahead and out on a limb and say he has more than 20 Twitter followers. He's probably not a listener. So, but also while we're talking sec defense and Justin Overbaugh being Secretary of the Army, just know that every 06 and above, with very few exceptions, there are exceptions, but very few. Every 06 and above, you are hereby immediately relieved on day one of my administration. Go ahead and start your SFL tap transition and pick up your blue ID card, because you are no longer in charge. You are no longer doing anything. You are no longer running anything. Period. 06 and above immediately. 05s, you're automatically being reevaluated. Your entire military history is being picked through with a fine-tooth comb. You're on notice. That goes for all you W4s and W5s too. Sorry asses. My Secretary of Interior is Jason Y in Louisiana. All right, that's my Secretary of the Interior, and so I'll throw out the one more, and then I'll throw it back over to Roger so you can keep rolling through. But I have a lot more. I have more, so we're not done yet. My Secretary of Agriculture. Again, I think agriculture is one of those things that needs to be kept and reformed. Brandon C. out in Kansas. Brandon C. is an actual farmer every day. No shit. This is what he does day in and day out. And Tom M. right here in North Carolina, who has his own farm. He retired out of the government. He runs his own farm. He grows his own food, slaughters his own cattle and goats for meat and stuff. So guess what? You guys are running you guys are running the Department of Agriculture. And run it. One of the rules that I have in my administration, one of many, by the way, is you will not, under any circumstances, this is zero exceptions, no exceptions, you will not hold a leadership role. And I'm talking about, in leadership role is defined as you having a direct report to you, unless you have done the blue collar grunt level job in which your department is specialized. There are zero exceptions to that. None whatsoever. So, all right, I got a lot more, but I'm going to kick it over to Roger. We'll keep this thing rolling.
I'm kind of curious the name of this new country that you're going to be running, because it's probably going to be pretty interesting. But
it's the greatest country in the world. It's called the United States of America. We're just under new management for a little while.
I do like the overarching theme because that's part of the problem with the federal government is just so big and it has so much power, and the employees are just too comfortable as a whole. And I'm not saying they should be fearful for their lives, but like you said, there should be present company accepted, but there should be a healthy fear, because the government doesn't fear the people. Okay. And we're not talking about violence and they're going to go shoot up their house or this, but there is no recourse with a lot of stuff. There is no oversight. The American people have no oversight. I don't want to jump off to a tangent too much, but one of these future episodes, we need to talk about local elections, because I do believe when we start talking about the fighting back politically, right, it's the local elections all the way up to your state, because I think when you get to that national divorce, it's not going to look like what we think it's going to look like. It's just going to be states where you have like Ron DeSantis down in Florida saying, you know what? No, we don't actually recognize any of that. We're going to do what we want to do. In federal government, if you want to make us, then you're going to have to send federal troops down here to do it. Take you back to like the 1960s, right? But anyway, that's a different episode. So Secretary of State, buddy of ours, Jim, the guy is a statesman, would do very well. I also had Rick Grinnell on the list. I think he would do a fantastic job. And Rick Grinnell could probably fill several of these positions. I think all three of us would agree with that. Secretary of Treasury, the guy who's good with money, Ted, and Deegan McDowell. I think that lady, I've listened to her and watched her for years on the Fox Business Network, as well as on Fox News. Again, it's these people that you would never convince them And you can even throw, and I threw him in the notables, the Larry Kudlows. It would be hard to convince them because one, they make way more money doing what they're doing now, and they would have to give up so much to do it. But that's why they would be good. That's why they would be good at what they do, because theoretically, there's no hidden agenda with this stuff. Secretary of Defense, going with John C., former military buddy, I think, of all three of ours, and Sebastian Gorka. I think the dude is legit now. I know he's doing some commercials now and this and that, but I think when you listen to the guy, when I've seen his interviews, and again, I don't have personal knowledge and I haven't personally interviewed this guy or have a personal relationship, but just what I see, the guy thinks like us. There's a lot of this. It's pretty easy. It just kind of comes down to some common sense. Like, hey, you have to love your country. I hate hearing the extreme MAGA. Okay, so MAGA means what? Make America great again. So what part of that do you not agree with? Do you not agree with making America great again? And I think folks are like, hey, our objectives are the same. We want to make this country great. We want to make it better. We want to make it prosperous. And oh, by the way, have some common sense and understand that the government works for the people, not the other way around. Here's my best pick of the night. And I'll do one more. I'll do two more after this. My attorney general would be Josh. It's funny because he brought up the you don't have to be a lawyer, or maybe it was Rick that brought up you don't have to be a lawyer. Josh would be my AG. And I believe, like, when you look at, and some of this already falls under that, but when you look at a lot of the, even with your Department of Homeland Security, when you look at your FBIs that fall under DOJ, it should all be led by the AG. And I would say, hey, you know what? Here's the deal. I don't think Josh has gone to an extreme saying, hey, we'll violate some of your freedoms temporarily. That happens, right? I don't think you have to, it's like I said, it's the movie Gladiator. Oh, so you'll just give the power back to the Senate? Of course I will, because that always works out well. I don't think you have to violate anybody's freedoms because there's already the legislative actions, activities, and policies to allow you to do this. You just have to be aggressive about it. Not to go off on the tangent again, but it goes back to what Josh said about being in a culture war. Oh, we can't go after a political candidate's son. Yeah, you can when he's a crackhead and ditched a gun in a trash can around the block from a school and lied on his firearms form. Right? You can do that. You just have to be aggressive about it, and you got to do it. But there's this status quo thing where it's the Pepsi Coke wars, like we've talked about. Hey, it's not about Pepsi beating Coke. It's just me and you staying 1 and 2. We just can't keep number 3. So, Josh, you're my AG. Do a good job at it. I hate to fire you. Secretary of Interior. Again, we'll combine that with EPA. Jack Hanna would be, and I know he's going through some dementia right now, but he would be my Secretary of Interior, combined with EPA, the animal dude on TV, along with Alan P. He would be a great Secretary of Interior, combined with the EPA. And Secretary of Agriculture, I'm going to go back to one of our earlier episodes, Julia Thompson, the cannabis advocate. She's going to be my Secretary of Agriculture, and I think that's probably defends itself, right? So, Luke, on you.
Some good picks there, man. Real good picks. I'll go through about 4 or 5 quickly. The VA, I think you guys will agree with me on both of these picks, possibly. Our loyal listener and fan, she puts her name on all the posts she likes, Jane Fairchild. But it would be real close between her and Jen Satterley. There would have to be like a board on that, because I think Jen Satterley would be great for the VA.
Well, it depends on who listens. Whoever listens to more episodes gets that position.
Well, Jane's got it then. But there you go. Good news for Jen is she's not totally out of the whole my ball of wax anyway, because I'll just cover my Secret Service. I'm not going to do away with them, because unlike Josh, I know I'm going to make a lot of enemies in my first day. So I'm going to need some big time Secret Service. So
who was it? William Harrison that lasted like 30 days or whatever?
Dude, yeah, it will be. There will be people after our asses the way we're going to handle some things. So
Josh's presidency lasts 1 day. They're like, is the year wrong on this? No, it was actually less than 24 hours.
No, bro. I'll be good, because I got 2 people on my Secret Service detail, and they're going to be heading up the whole thing. One is Damon Schroner. Brother, Damon Schroner has been taking care of me since I was in the freaking 4th grade. This dude is a badass, and he is a protector, and he is a listener. So Damon is on my Secret Service detail. I think he's going to be my body man, period. That's all there is to it. But I said, Jen, you're still in the game because Tom Satterley is on that detail too, organizing freaking everything. And that would probably be who I would spend the most time trying to recruit, is that dude. Tom's been on the podcast, Tom and Jen both. Go back and listen to that one. Tom really knows what he's doing. Check out his book, check out her book. And so let's keep going here. So Secretary of Agriculture, Jed Moorhead. Dude's a PhD. He has had his hands dirty. He would fit Josh's profile of you have to have done the blue collar work. Jed, you're my Secretary of Agriculture, brother. Secretary of Commerce, I put Ted right there. I think Ted's one of those guys that would be good at a lot of these different jobs. And so he's my Secretary of Commerce. And I went ahead and put Jim D as the Secretary of Labor. I think he'd be a good pick for that. But again, a lot of these listeners, a lot of these people that we're saying, not just listeners, but like Rick Grinnell, goes down the same line. They'd be good at so many different jobs. So, like I said, Secretary of Treasury Darren, he'd be good as Secretary of Labor too. So, yeah, those are a few right there. I
maybe
said
you just
EPA,
rotate them. Right?
Yeah,
Maybe you just rotate them. They all do it for 18 months, and then you just rotate them. So, hey, guess what?
Boom.
You're going to be another secretary. Boom. There you go.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I joked the other day in the text. I was like, by EPA. First of all, I'll do Secretary of Interior and EPA because I like you guys. That's good. EPA and Secretary of the Interior, they need to be the same. I put my daughter Amber as the Secretary of Interior. They should be good at the job. But EPA, I put the ghost of Michael Crichton. If y'all haven't, again, we could do a whole episode of how I'm going to use the EPA before I dismantle it. But if you guys haven't read the afterword to State of Fear by Michael Crichton, I want the ghost of Michael Crichton to be my EPA guy. Dude, oh my God. Read the afterword to State of Fear by Michael Crichton, and you'll understand
that is literally
why.
You sent it to us before. That would be tied for the one I would get rid of first. I would be a tie between the DOE, Department of Energy, and the EPA.
Look, man, it's a back alley knife fight, like Josh always says. These things are going away. But before they go away, I'm going to use them to dismantle all this shit and to bring China to its knees. And then it's freaking going away. Dude, the EPA, that is okay. I'm going to leave it alone right there. Josh, don't focus too much on the EPA. Just realize I hate them, but I do realize the power they wield. I'm going to use that right before I freaking get rid of it, and no one else can use it again. That's what I'm saying. You're short-sighted, Josh. That's all there is to it. You're short-sighted. You got rid of your Secret Service and fired a bunch of people trained with firearms on day one. Don't tell me you're taking the long game on this. I'm joking with you. Don't get pissed. You've got that go to hell look. So give us a few more of your picks, man. Don't get too mad. I'm messing with you.
The EPA. Luke's been watching Aaron Brockovich too much. They're reminiscing about some. Anyway, all right. Luke's fucking EPA. Get out of here with that bullshit. All right. So running back through my small council. So the Director, National Intelligence, aka the Master of Whispers, in my administration, is Luke. Luke is going to run that.
Don't do that to me.
No, you're going to run that. But here's the stipulation for that, though, bro. You have to be Littlefinger. You have to be Littlefinger and Varys like combined. Right?
He's already Littlefinger.
Before I do anything rash, I will always pass it by you, and I promise you will give me the thumbs up.
I mean, if it's rash, I probably already approve. So just go ahead and do it. I'm gonna push
intent.
I'm flat. Hey, man, I'm flattening the organization. This is another thing that we're doing. We are flattening this crap. We are flattening it. We are pushing those decisions down to as low as they can go. Real quick, the Secretary of the Air Force is going to be Tyler B. up in Virginia, and also added to my Department of Agriculture with farming and stuff is going to be Mimi up in Virginia as well. So I had down my Secretary of Commerce. I had Damon S. out in Texas. So I had Damon in Commerce. Again, my Secretary of Labor is Ryan S. up in Northern Virginia. He does that work day in and day out, man. He's out doing any and everything with his home improvement business, which we highlighted on here before. Honey done. Let's see, what are some of my others? So Secretary of Health and Human Services, I've got Christy D, who is Jim D's wife, out in Arizona. She's going to run Health and Human Services. And while she's doing that, old Jim D, he is now running the Small Business Administration for my government. My Attorney General, I picked Kurt Schlichter. I said his name right. There you go. Y'all should be pretty happy, right? So my AG is going to be Kurt Schlichter. The Chief of Staff, so I kept the Chief of Staff position, right? Because I feel like everybody needs a good Chief of Staff. Everybody needs that person that that's whispering in their ear. And so I've actually picked Wes out in Colorado. And I think Wes is up to the job, because again, it goes back to can they do the job? Will they do the job? And are they the right fit? Wes is very much along my line of thinking when it comes to, communists aren't real people, so it doesn't matter what you do with them, kind of deal. Because I'm going to need Wes as my Chief of Staff. Like he's going to have to be like Doug Stamper from House of Cards, Chief of Staff, right? Like he's going to be the bag man, and he's going to need do some stuff. I forget which movie it was. It's got Ben Affleck, but he walks up to the guy and he's like, "Hey, we're going to go, you can't ask any questions. We can never talk about it, but we're going to hurt some people." And the guy's response is like, "Whose car are we taking?"
Yeah. Jeremy Renner, right? The Town.
Yeah. Like that's going to be my Chief of Staff. So Wes, if you're up to the job, brother, it's yours. My Secretary of Energy, I actually had Jed out in Texas, right? So I do keep the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy's only mission, their only mission is to make the United States the leading producer of coal, oil, and nuclear power in the world. That's their only mission.
Boom, their other mission, love it.
You can use some alternative energy sources only where they make sense and where it is feasible, and only if I approve it. That's it. All right. All those windmills that are out there just sitting stagnant that Luke keeps sending pictures of, they're not even turning, out in Texas where there's nothing but wind and dirt. Guess what? Either those things start turning, or they're going to be turned into targets for the Air Force to practice on.
Dude, he literally sends pictures of like the field grass blowing, the car moving, the road moving. The only thing stagnant in that photo, it's the windmill. That's the only thing not moving.
And they're usually rusted out too.
It's crazy. And you can't recycle those. You bunch of environmental dumbasses. You guys are going to have a place, for in Luke's administration, though, in his EPA. You guys will be able to nest and continue to spread your rot and your monkeypox. All right. So I got my Secretary of Energy. Again, my Secretary of Transportation, Joe Z down in Florida. Brother, you out there, you're working. You're gonna get this country's roads and infrastructure fixed. Veterans Affairs, I went with Ryan T up in Virginia. But Jane Fairchild, great pick. Jen Satterley, obviously a great pick.
What about Ryan? Oh, Ryan T. Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were mistaken on that. Yeah. That's a good pick.
And my Secretary of Homeland Security, again, he's going to be a Doug Stamper type. He's going to do a lot of things. I'm not going to ask him a lot of questions. He's going to be like that specialist or that warrant officer who just gets things done. You don't ask him how they did it. You don't ask him where that drip pan came from. You just happy, hey man, I got a drip pan on, under all the Humvees on my line. I'm not going to ask why, there's some other unit stenciled, on there, right? You don't ask those types of questions.
So you actually keep DHS and all those D bags over there, except for one. You keep DHS around.
He didn't read the text. He must have been asleep during the text exchange.
Yeah. Right. Roger was asleep during the text. So Admiral Dave, is my Secretary of Homeland Security. And that's where the Border Protection Agency is going to fall under that. So one of the very first things that Admiral Dave is going to do is he's going to issue every homeowner, landowner on the border a letter of marque, a backhoe, and a couple of pallets of 7.62. And we're going to take care of the border problem ourselves. That's going to be fixed, right? And Admiral Dave's going to be the one that gets it fixed. Again, let's see who else I got. That's about no, I got a couple more, but I'll kick it back to how many more rounds you got? Because I got one more push that
I probably
that I
got
need to
one
get up.
more round. I can break this in half. We're good. We're good.
Okay, all right, I got
Another
more.
round.
Go ahead and run through some more of yours.
So Secretary of Commerce, I've got Rich H. You know who you are. Gifted Gab, great at meeting people. He gets out there, man. You just got to foster relationships. He's one of the best at it.
That's
He's
a good
probably
one.
he's probably one of the only true extroverts that, like, the dude is legitimately a true extrovert. Like, we all fake it, right? You go, yeah, how you doing? He's actually a true extrovert. Secretary of Labor, some of these folks were some of ours are the same. I think you actually looked at my notes, but Secretary of Labor, Josie, Alan P., both common sense dudes. Josie, blue collar guy, worked hard his whole life, and I think you bring that perspective. It goes back to, I think Josh hit it on the head with, you have to have done the job. I mean, get out there and get your hand. It's the Mike Rowe thing, right? That's the whole appealing part about dirty jobs is people don't realize that, oh, well, this shows up on my table. It's like, well, yeah, there's a lot more that goes into this. And somewhere down the road, far removed from most of us, it's some guy, gal getting their hands dirty. So both those folks that way. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Christy, same thing. She could almost be a chief of staff because she's a ball breaker. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, it's gone. Eliminated it. I actually falls under the AG and under Josh, because when you look at the HUD, the only thing the HUD does, it's like civil rights acts, right? It's like, well, we just make sure that you're following the law. Well, I don't need you to make sure that. So a lot of this, and this is why I talk about DHS and this and that. So what happens is all this information gets siloed because you have so many different departments with so many different authorities and this and that. Now, I agree with Josh with the FBI, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to prosecution in your AG, and maybe there's some different offices that are broken out underneath that. But at the end of the day, you're breaking laws. So when you talk about federal laws, interstate conflict, political or international. So at the end of the day, when it comes down to like your HUD and discrimination, that type of stuff, I mean, it's enforcement. I mean, HUD's not out there building houses. I mean, maybe they are. I haven't seen any HUD built houses, but from what I've been able to read, they just basically enforce a lot of the civil rights acts and all the, we've all heard about redlining and this. Like, do you actually need HUD to do that? I mean, can the AG just not prosecute that stuff? So anyway, HUD's gone. Don't need it. Secretary of Transportation, Steve. You both know Steve. Great car guy, and bring some common sense to this. And he would not try to chest feed any of his kids. I don't think he's done that, which I don't expect him to do that. Secretary of Energy, Craig M., smartest dude I know. As far as book smarts, guys like a formula chemist, he'd be great at that. And I'll stop at this next one here and go over to Luke. Secretary of Education, gone, dismantled. By the way, do we know? So I was joking with Josh the other day. We know that Secretary of Education came about under Reagan's administration, which Carter passed. Reagan tried to get rid of it. Anybody know why that failed? I never got to that part of the article. Did we know why he was unable to dismantle the Department of Education?
Because of what his own words. The closest thing to immortality is a government department or bureau.
Yep.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Because here's the thing, right? And this is where I go back to, we're gonna have to violate some of those, constitutional principles to save the Constitution. You know how hard it is? They came out, Congress and even members of the executive branch came out and told Donald Trump he can't fire members of the executive branch. He can't fire employees in the executive branch as the chief executive. I'm not going to have that problem.
So this is the difference with that. This comes down to being aggressive. Because here's the deal: much like we're finding out with the elections in 2020 and a whole bunch of other things, you just do it. It's like the COVID mask. I mean, when you look at vaccinations now, right? We've already had 2 major court cases now. Like, no, you actually can't fire anybody for that. You've already had monetary damages be awarded. So it comes down to, well, you know what? I tell you what, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And then you fight me in court. We'll take this up because it'll be 5 years. Dude, we will be fighting the COVID wars for 5 years. And the Democrats knew that. Hey, just do it. And here's the thing. They come back and they rule against it. They change it slightly, right? It's kind of like GNC and the RIP fuel. You just change the chemical slightly. This was banned, but we just moved this molecule over here. So this one here is not banned. That's what they do. And they know it's going to take, well, money, resources. I got to go fight this in court again. It'll be 2 or 3 years. You just do it. You fire them. Hey, good luck, because it will take you 3 years to go through the DOL and get all the way up to a state Supreme Court before you can even argue that point.
Just like Joe did with the CDC rent moratorium, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You just do it.
I'm not saying you guys are wrong. Obviously, you guys have some really good points. I would just take a different approach. That's all I'm saying. So I'll go down a few of my picks here. Talk about getting their hands dirty. Department of Energy. My energy secretary is going to be Grant Walston. Guy has had his hands dirty in doing the energy thing for years. I loved what you said, Josh. I loved what you said about your energy policy. Good stuff. But I'm going to go back to my EPA thing. What's the cleanest form of energy, Josh? What is the cleanest form of energy?
Nuclear.
Exactly. It's going to be nuclear. So Grant, you're my energy secretary. Congratulations, brother. I know you'll take the job. So education, that thing's gone. But you know who's going to dismantle it? A little man not a little man. He's actually a tall man. He's a big guy named Russell Camp. That guy is going to dismantle my Department of Education. He's going to do it the right way. I'll appoint him, and then he will work his way out of a job, and he'll know that before he goes in. Health and Human Services, you guys keep talking about this Christie person. She still has a friend of me on Facebook. I don't know what's up with that. So she's not my Health and Human Services secretary.
Well, she hadn't heard of me either. So
I know, man. She's hardcore, like Roger said. So my Health and Human Services is Eric Schaefer. Shout out to Eric down in Amarillo. Man, that guy, again, hands dirty. The man is a businessman. He has his head down, and he is in the weeds. So that's my guy. HUD, again, that thing's going away, but until it does, I'm going to give John Blanchard his swing at it because that should have been his. If Trump would have won, John Blanchard would be the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development right now. So I'll fulfill his dream and let him do that job for about 4 months until it's gone. Transportation, I got Isaac Hayes, the Cajun Conservative. So if y'all haven't listened to the most recent, well, by the time this comes out, the second to most recent episode, there was a very special guest host on that, and I heard he did a good job. So Isaac is my Secretary of Transportation. So, Josh, when you said that the DNI, right? You had me as a DNI?
Yes.
Okay. I think that would have been, based on your argument, or not argument, your case, I think you'd be a good DNI for me. I didn't have you down, but now that I think about that, I think you'd be a good DNI, but because it's like, dude, put your head down. You got the commander's intent. I don't want to hear about it. Just get it done. I had Gada Wadon down at the Randall County Sheriff's Office because that lady's really got it going on with intel. But Josh, I don't know. I think I would keep you in the position I had you in because I know you've got limitless potential within my organization. But Josh, I love to laugh at some of the things you say. I love to laugh at some of the things you do. And 9 times out of 10, you're right. So I had you as my ambassador to the UN because that would be just nonstop entertainment for me. Nonstop entertainment. Josh as the ambassador to the UN. And I know I would be laughing at your expense, but man, it would just be, Khrushchev with a shoe on the table. That would be a lot of fun. Now I've got a couple more. I didn't mean to slight you with that. You're kind of the butt of the joke on that, but DNI, I like that. Maybe I'll make Gada. You know what? I'll switch those. I'll make Gada the ambassador to the UN because she would be just as entertaining, and I'll make you my DNI. So I got a couple more just like you guys do, but I'll kick it over to you.
So I don't know, man. That dude, the ambassador to the UN. That actually sounds. I could have some fun with that if
I
you're
know.
okay. If
Oh,
you're
I'm
okay.
okay. I'm okay.
Okay, well, I mean, when I come back and say, "Hey, I declared war on 3 different countries in the last UN assembly," I mean,
I'll be
you're gonna
like,
need to
go tell
understand that.
Justin. Go tell Justin.
Yeah, man, the UN, dude. Also, speaking of the UN, I was gonna get to this. Speaking of the United Nations, in my administration, they no longer have a headquarters in the United States. Um, so that's that's my take on
Put
the
that shit in
United Nations.
Africa somewhere.
Yeah, no,
Ethiopia.
100%.
There you go.
It's in
Ethiopia.
Addis. It's in
Yep.
Addis. Only though, only they are going to have to pay the Ethiopians an exorbitant amount of money. An exorbitant amount of money. So anyway, so running through a couple more of I'll just go ahead and exhaust my on my list. So my White House press secretary is going to be Christina Pushaw. She's currently the spokesperson for Ron DeSantis's governorship reelection campaign. So remember, I said that some of the agencies I would immediately abolish, but I would reconstitute in some form or another. I am going to reconstitute 2 portions of the ATF. My director, my secretary of alcohol, is going to be Chris T. If you remember from episode 4, the whiskey made me do it. Chris's job, his sole mission, the only job for that agency is to destroy the secondary bourbon market, right? Your job, dismantle the secondary market for bourbon and to expand all distillery production in the United States. So
you hate capitalism then, is what you're saying.
the secondary bourbon market is done. I'm sorry. The secretary. Look, I don't know if you caught at the beginning when I said we're going to suspend some of those constitutional principles to save the Constitution.
I'm just saying, so you hate capitalism. So
I'm
if
in
I want
power,
to buy a bottle,
Look,
want to buy
we're
a bottle and then turn around and resell it, so then I guess what I send you an email, like, what can I'll send Christy an email, like, so how much can I
no,
mark
you
this
can
up?
sell it. You can sell it on the black market. Just don't get caught. Because if you get caught, then you're going to go make big rocks into little rocks.
So what's the markup? It has
For
to be
right now.
MSRP.
What's that?
So what's the markup then? None? Zero? Like, if I resell something, it has to be what I paid for it?
It depends on what I like. It depends on what I want. I don't think I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear at the beginning of this. I thought when I said, one, we're going to suspend the republic values and constitutional principles.
The
and
title of this episode. The title of this episode. This is why folks in our business love alcohol. It depends on what I like.
Yeah, I thought when I said that I'm not going to refer to it as a cabinet, but my small council, I kind of thought you would pick up on that. Dude, I'm going through this. I am going through this government, this current structure we have, like Joffrey Baratheon through Westeros. Bro, I am not. I am going through it. I like my administration like Sherman likes Atlanta. Hot and on fire. All right. The Canteen cabinet, dude, that's really good. That's really good. I think Luke's is a winner. Anyway, all right, and so we're bringing back the firearms, right? So the firearms portion of the ATF. So one of the things that we're going to do with firearms, first off, all firearms laws on the books are immediately dissolved. Done. NFA, gone. Everything, gone. Every school in the United States, elementary, middle, and high school, will have a civilian marksmanship program. We will take the current CMP, the civilian marksmanship program. That will be in every single school in America. Chris P. out in Texas and Big DC are going to run that program. And there are 0 exemptions. And I say Big DC. Big DC is now an NRA certified firearms instructor. And he's getting ready to open up a range up in Maryland. So that's why I got them too. And we're also going to have leadership. We're going to have a secretary of leadership. In every school, we'll have a comprehensive leadership program to teach you how to be a better citizen and a better leader. That's going to be run by Jeremy M., one of the best NCOs next to Roger that I know. And then we're going to have a fitness program, fitness and nutrition education in every single school at every level, to include private schools. That is going to be ran by Joe Rogan and Papa Swolio. If you don't know who Papa Swolio is, you need to get on Instagram and you need to get your shit together. And you need to figure out Papa Swolio. He looks like this big Viking, and all he does, every single Instagram post that he makes is he's the white CT Fletcher, right? And so CT Fletcher is also going to be involved in this. Every Instagram post he is, go to the gym. Hey, how you doing? Get your sorry ass to the gym. All right, they're running the fitness programs, so that's kind of a wrap for everything in my administration. Again, if you're a current government employee in one of those agencies I named, I'm sorry about your luck, but Joe Z has some shovel ready jobs for you. You can go out, you can get familiar with how asphalt is made, how roads are made, how shit's done. You can paint lines in the road, whatever. But that's what's going to be done in a Josh administration. So,
dude,
after my term is up,
some of the pictures he sends is hot. Like,
dude,
I sweat looking at them. Like, nah, I ain't doing that.
Yeah, no, man. Well, some people aren't going to have a choice in my administration. In federal prisons, guess what? All prisons, the guy out from out in Arizona, Joe, what's his name? Who, made him wear pink uniforms and live in GP mediums. Dude, that's all prisons. That's all prisons from here on out. Done.
Oh, I love that.
Cable TV, all that hot chow. Nah, dude, that's all done. It's all done. It's all gone. So if you're a government employee, you wake up every morning and you're scared. If you're a good citizen and you love your country and you support the Constitution, you're good. You're safe. Enjoy. I'll kick it over to Roger.
All right, so I'll round up my cabinet here. So, Secretary of Veterans Affairs, like, why can't we get this right? Like, the VA, like, seriously, outside of why can we not get the VA right? It makes no sense to me. But I would use Randy M. or Jeremy M. I think both those guys, one of them, Jeremy M. Both those guys, soldiers, right? They're in touch with the needs, and I think are straightforward enough, common sense enough to propose some solutions and overhaul this place, because that's a lot of it. You just can't get rid of folks. Like, they suck. Well, guess what? Oh, well, we've got tenure and we hang around. Like, people were literally dying. I went to the Phoenix VA to get glasses a couple years ago, and I showed up early, like we all do. You're like, oh, I got to be 30 minutes early, whatever. Dude, I drove around that parking lot for like an hour and 10 minutes looking for somewhere to park. I'm like, I see why people are dying in the parking lot here. And I'm like, you already know how the story plays out. I'm driving around, and maybe it wasn't an hour, 10 minutes. Maybe it was like 30 minutes or whatever. So I'm driving around for like 30 minutes. You look for somewhere to park. You park 45 minutes out. You got to walk. You damn near got to take a taxi. And you already know how it's going to play out. Well, hey, you're 20 minutes late to your appointment. Sorry, you need to reschedule. That's great, because it only took me 4 months to get this one. So anyway, both of you guys, one of you two guys, both of you, whatever, you're going to fix this. This was a tough one for me. So, Secretary of Homeland Security. So I want to abolish that cabinet. But I have 4 people that I would throw in there, ones or twos or one after the other, whatever. Chris T, Will K, Chris P, and DC. One of you guys either have to fix this or we're throwing it under the AG, because I do think it becomes a law enforcement piece. And I think they could be doing a lot more now than just violating the constitutional rights of Americans. And if one of you 4 guys can't fix it, we're getting rid of it. It's going under the AG. EPA, like I said, we're combining that with the Interior. And the last one, and I had the same one as Josh, he's cheating. Director of National Intelligence, I actually picked Luke. So, Luke, congratulations. 2 of the 3 canteeners, you were the DNI. So from here and now, you will be the DNI.
Luke didn't even have me in his administration originally.
Yeah, I did.
Noted. Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did.
I thought you didn't.
No,
I don't think he had either one of us in
right
his
here.
administration originally.
No, I had Josh right here, Ambo to the UN, but talking about John Podesta and stuff. I've kind of actually changed
Dude, he
Okay,
gave you
as
some
we've been
ammo.
yeah.
recording.
That's not,
I think
is that actually so? Ambo to the UN. That's Nikki Haley. Like, is that actually part of the administration? I mean, really,
Yeah,
like he couldn't fit any
yeah.
of these other jobs here.
It's a
I think he,
secretary
I
level
had.
position.
I think he penciled me in at the last minute.
No, I
That's okay.
didn't. It's right
That's okay.
here.
Hey,
You'll get a
Josh,
knock on
Just
your
send you a
you'll get a
picture.
knock on your door in my
you want my
administration.
administration because you're the AG in my administration.
Okay,
Just
okay.
remember
That's enough.
that.
Okay, so the U.S. Trade Representative, I have the 50th name under the H's in the Atlanta, Georgia phone book because what the hell, right? It's just to underscore a point. Some of these positions don't matter at all. They're token positions, whatever. So CIA, Mark Costello, former G2 at Army South, that guy knows more about intel. He should be y'all's DNI, not me. And he would clean house at CIA. So press secretary, you guys have talked about that quite a bit. I got Sean Hannity, Kurt Schlichter, or Michael Malice. Can you imagine the chaos if Michael Malice was the press secretary? DHS, my boy Jesse. He don't want his last name said. My boy Jesse. I actually bounced this off him. It's like, what would you think about being my Secretary of Homeland Security? And he's like, he has some really good ideas that I think both of you guys would like. I'll say flechette rounds and AH-64s. I like that idea. I like that a lot. Coast Guard outfitted with the AH-64s. I like that a lot. But with Jesse, there are strings attached. My boy Diego that listens to this has to be the head of the CBP. Diego knows a lot. He would solve the problems. A lot of the stuff that Josh has said, a lot of the stuff that Roger has said, absolutely on the ball, 100%. So talking about John Podesta, right? Special advisor to the president or whatever. So I would make Josh my special advisor to the president. He'd be my John Podesta, right?
You just
That's
made
a
that
real
up.
thing now. I did because we were talking about John Podesta earlier. I guess that's a new position, right? So my chief of staff, right? Because I keep thinking it's like I need people to balance me out. That's why I said like Joe Rogan as my VP, Scott as my VP, people to balance me out. I would still need to talk to you guys as we were doing this. So I would have Roger as my chief of staff because Roger would be even the president of the United States, right? I'm the president. You got to respect the office. But Roger would be like, no, I know you, dumbass. You're being a dumbass. And Josh would say the same thing. And what we would do is we would have these little fireside chats once a week, and we would just record them and put it out as C3. And so the whole nation could know exactly what the hell we were
They're like,
talking
hey,
about.
you thought the Nixon tapes were bad?
Oh, bro.
All you would hear is we'd bring up a name, and Josh would be like, yeah, fuck that dude.
Transparency. That's what my administration is all about. So you guys are going to get to listen to our weekly discussions every day. Josh is the DNI or my John Podesta or the ambassador of the UN. Listen to what this dumb son of a bitch from Madagascar said the other day about our energy policy and how it needs to benefit them. Wouldn't that be that's gold, Ben? It's good stuff. So I think that pretty much rounds out my picks. I had a few others, but there's so many listeners that we didn't get to, and I realize that. But man, we had a lot of fun putting this together, and I really do believe that these will be some good picks. So, Josh, if you want to close us out or give us some final thoughts and kick it to Roger to close us out.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple final thoughts and I'll kick it to Roger to close us out. So my administration too will be transparent. I will publish the list every day of the communists and the other non people that we have in custody, and where they're located. So you can see those. Again, transparency, right?
You're not going to need. You're going to want to keep FEMA in those camps, brother.
Yeah, FEMA. Yeah, so FEMA. I don't know. So FEMA's on the they're on the undecided block, but they need to be reformed as well. And one organization that we didn't mention, I don't think anybody mentioned, the IRS. Nobody mentioned the IRS.
Well, because
how did we
I
lose
looked at
IRS?
cabinet secretary cabinet level positions and they fall under
Yeah,
it.
that's true. Yeah, no, that's fair. Um, and yeah, so the IRS, the IRS is gone. Uh, so anyway, yeah. So if you guys on a little bit of a lighter note, um, so earlier this week, yeah, I got to co-host. Luke and Roger were busy. I got to co-host an episode of the Cajun Conservative. It was good. Check it out. Um, so I tell you what, Roger, with the time, I'm going to go ahead and
We're
close
good.
this out unless you got something.
Yeah, we
Um,
got a couple minutes.
okay,
Unless you
so
want to finish, you want to finish your thought with Cajun Concern.
yeah,
One, he
I'll finish
makes
my
us look
thought and then
bad
give it to you.
because he puts stuff way more often than we do. So
Well, Isaac over the Cajun Conservative, he actually, he records an episode and he drops it every Monday morning. He's very consistent. We are very inconsistent, and a lot of it's due to our schedules. So, it is what it is. He gets to record by himself. It's a lot easier than trying to sync schedules with three people who are very busy and got a lot of different things going on. But just a shout out to Isaac again, man. I really appreciate you. You reaching out to us and offering that up to us. We definitely got to get you on, back over here. And maybe, when one of us can't make it, to our recordings, maybe you can sit in for, for one of us as well. So we'll always have three. So, but with that, it was fun putting this together. I really appreciate, everybody who takes the time to listen, because as Luke says very often, your time is the most important thing that you have, and we appreciate you giving it to us. So with that, I'll throw it over to Roger. He can close us out.
So we need to do an episode on climate change. So we've talked about this a little bit before, and I've read a lot of articles like a lot of folks out there have, and you see what's on TV and yada, yada, yada. But I've never actually looked at the numbers. And I just started looking at the numbers there's a couple of things I've read over the last several weeks, months. And it's like, you know what? Let me look at this stuff myself, because there's a lot of government data out there. It's like, let me look at this stuff myself and let me see where we're sitting at. So a lot of this is rhetorical. You don't have to, neither one of you two have to answer, but the big climate change we know exists up and down. And the big argument, which they don't make anymore, the big argument is man-made climate change. And I think part of that, as I'm talking through this, might be the Democrats want man-made climate change because they feel they can control it. Whereas the rest of us kind of know that, hey, man, the Earth, it goes through cycles and it kind of is what it is. I mean, asteroid decides to hit the Earth, hits the Earth, it's going to hit the Earth. But point being, so man-made climate change, if you believe it has that much of an impact, and again, I'm just spitballing this stuff I need to read more myself. But man-made climate change is based on greenhouse gases from us burning fossil fuels, using fossil fuels, CO2, yada, 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 right? So CO2 is cooking the earth. And I think I tweeted or I texted this earlier, and I feel kind of dumb and silly because I should have Googled this earlier. The amount of CO2 in our atmosphere is 0.04%. Okay. And I think it's actually under that. I think it's like 0.0395. So they round it up. In 1960, it was 0.032%. But when you look at the graph, and I forget what I looked at, it was like Mediaite or one of these other things. They show this graph, right? And it's just straight up. It's a cliff. And you know why? Because the bar starts at like 0.03 and then goes to like 0.045. So it looks like the trajectory is just straight up. Right? Go ahead, Luke.
See, what you're talking about is we do need to do an episode on this, and I think we need to do it relatively soon. Is the measurements you're talking about, right? You look at the sensitivity of the instruments over the past 20 years. The sensitivity of the instruments has gone way up. And what is driving the calibration of these instruments? How much CO2 is in the atmosphere? So they're calibrated to measure CO2. So if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, there were no calibrated instruments to measure that. So it's like, dude, this is all about measurements and mathematics and what pays for the studies, period. So I'm sorry, you got me worked up. Now Roger's getting me worked up. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're spot on, because I think, and I had to Google this because I read an article that said, and I can't remember the year, but it's exactly what Luke is saying. They were like, if you look at most of your government websites when it comes to weather and climate change, it says back to 1922. I think it's 1922. It might be after that, but that's where they can actually start saying, hey, we have somewhat of like concrete measurements, right? Plus or minus 0.01, 0.02. And I think it was Dr. Jordan Peterson who came up and he brought up that valid point. He was like, hey, man, you got to look. There's a reason why we don't have measurements back in the 1850s, right? The way that we measured back in the 1850s and how we measure now is night and day. And your margin of error is night and day. And when you're talking about 0.032, and this comes from the government, anybody can Google this. When you're looking at 0.032 versus 0.04, in my mind, that's margin of error. And I don't know, maybe I'm not an environmentalist, not a scientist. I get it, but I know basic math. And I was reading on Substack the other day. So basically the difference is, well, no, it wasn't even the difference. 0.04% is equivalent to a bird dropping a turd on the top of Big Ben. And I'm not talking about the football player. I'm talking about the clock tower. That is the perspective. Okay. That is perspective of 0.04%. So when you talk about 0.032 versus and I'll give you the rounding, I'll give you the 0.04. When you talk about that, it's even less than that. Right. So again, always open to new data, always open to education. Somebody tells me that, hey, that really does make a difference. And so it really is man-made climate change, this and that. I'm open to it. I'll read it. And if it makes sense to me, but at that point you go with common sense. It's like, it just doesn't make sense. And I think, Josh, you sent out a tweet, and I'm going to read it here as they pull it up. We've been sending out a couple things, but talking about August NASA satellite temps are in, no warming in almost 8 years, despite lots more CO2. August 22, same temp as August 1998. Climate is a hoax, yada, yada, yada. And for those listeners out there, so generally speaking, from everything I've read, climate is based off a 30-year model. So that is like if you said a climate, they base it off a 30-year model. And when you look at our measurements going back to, and again, maybe it's 1922, maybe it's earlier than that, early 1900s or so. I mean, it's only 120 years. You get 4 models? And we've talked about it before. When you look at glaciers, 150,000 years ago, guess what? We had almost no glaciers. Now, it's different than, and my big kick lately, and again, we'll do another episode on this, has been water conservation. There's a difference. But I think when you look at man-made climate change, I'm not saying that we should be out there burning, diesel in the backyard every day for the hell of it. But I think when you actually look at the data, and I'd like for us to do a deep dive in it, to actually pull some numbers, because at that point, and pull government numbers, right? Pull the government numbers and say, hey, this is where it's at. And for the listeners out there, draw your own conclusions, because I think both you guys, if you're anywhere close to where I was, I felt kind of dumb when climate change has been in the news for years. And when I started looking at the numbers, I'm like, man, it just doesn't support it, right? And anytime there's an anomaly, it's like, well, no, we're only talking about a couple years of data. That's not climate. Well, no, and I absolutely agree with you. So let's look at 100 years worth of data. Let's look at 200 years worth of data. Well, you can't, because the measurements aren't there. So last thing, Luke, Josh, you guys got anything to kick out?
I got one more thing. You said you'd make your wife the VP. So half the day today, when my wife and I are together, she don't want to
hold
be
on,
the VP.
hold on. So my wife just walked out of the room. There's no fucking way I'm making her the VP. All right. So you know that I'm not making her the VP, because she will be what Kamala Harris was supposed to be. She will be the de facto freaking president, and my ass will be unemployed working at one of Josh's education camps.
So anyway, my wife don't want to be the VP. She wants to be the first lady. So we had an entire conversation today about who would be her chief of staff. And we still can't decide, because our daughter is going to be the Secretary of Interior. So
it's going to be your pool boy, Julio.
There you go. Kick it back to you. My bad.
All right. Josh, you got anything else?
The last thing I'm going to say, the very last thing that I'm going to do on day one in my administration is I'm going to ban Stacey Abrams from Waffle House and Golden Corral. That's just gonna be that. Where I'm putting my foot down, people. I'm putting my foot down.
This is brutal, man.
It's gonna be that.
I did get you a Waffle House coffee cup, though. You remember that years ago?
You did. You did. I
did.
appreciate that too, man.
Yeah,
you know
man.
what? That's one of my favorite coffee cups.
And I didn't even steal it. I actually paid for it. I was like, "Hey, dude, like, how much for a coffee cup?" He's like, "We don't sell these." I'm like, "How about $5?" He's like, "Sounds good to me." Yep,
That
done
dude
deal.
that guy with the neck tattoo, because I promise you, I didn't even see the guy. I promise you he's got a neck tattoo. He's working at Waffle House, smothering and covering hash browns. He put that $5 in his pocket and was like, whatever. And as soon as you walked out, he's like, hey, that guy stole a coffee cup. That Asian dude.
Exactly. So, hey, ladies and gentlemen out there, we appreciate you listening to us. It's been, this should be one of our longer ones. I think we're just over 2 hours. We've been talking about the whole cabinet thing. I'm not sure I want to live in the world or the country that Josh is going to run. I could probably make it in Luke's. Josh is, I feel like I'm going to the gulag. I mean, I get that feeling that I'm going to the gulag. So
are you a communist?
No, but you might be. So
no, I'm good, bro.
I'm just saying. But I think a lot of this stuff just comes down to it's like so many of these solutions are just common sense, right? And I think that's what we try to implore is like, there's just some common sense and they'll be left or right. And unlike Joe Biden, where he goes 20 minutes of all MAGA Republicans, all, anybody who voted for Trump, you're all extremists, you're all terrorists. And then at the end, the last 30 seconds, by the way, unity, we all need to get along. Yeah, you want me to get along with your policies. But anyway, thanks for listening to us. Carlton Zeus, go out and check out his music, www.carltonzeus.com. He's also on Apple Music. By the way, we do have a website, culpercanteencup.com. We tried to call, so here's a little bit behind the curtains. We have probably 15 listeners on Culper's Canteen Cup, and all of you are filling cabinet positions. So that is coincidental. That is coincidental. So we do encourage you to share because if you're not sharing, and we do monitor Facebook, actually, Luke monitors Facebook. He monitors your pages because that's the kind of business that he's in. And if we don't find that you're sharing us, you will no longer have that cabinet position. You won't be in my cabinet. You'll be in Josh's cabinet. And believe me, from what I've heard, you don't want to be in Josh's cabinet. So, hey, thanks for listening out there. Thanks for watching. Keep your canteen cups tightly secured.